Friday edition of Outkick 360, hour number 2, about to begin the Volquest Power Hour, which will take place in the final hour of the program each and every Friday right here on the Outkick Network. Shout out to Blackbird Studio, our host. We are here each and every day, Studio G, live from Nashville, Tennessee. TheBlackbirdAcademy.com for more information on how you can attend a school strictly for audio production, studio engineering, and everything behind the scenes. TheBlackbirdAcademy.com for more info. Some NFL draft news before we get started with the Tennessee Power Hour.
Just coming across from Adam Schefter via Twitter, Dolphins are trading the number 3 overall pick to the San Francisco 49ers for the number 12 pick, a 2021 third-round pick, which was San Francisco's compensatory pick for Robert Saleh's hiring, and first-round picks in 2022 and 2023. A ridiculous haul. Dolphins really collecting more and more. They've had a lot, and they've got a lot, and they're getting more. San Francisco moving up to number 3, getting the quarterback of the future there, and the end of Jimmy G. I think that would be the presumption.
Yeah, you don't give up
all of
2
that.
future first-round picks to move up and not draft a quarterback.
Yeah.
With
So
that
is
value.
it-
Now, who is it?
Is it Zach Wilson or Justin Fields?
Well, Zach Wilson's pro days today, where the Jets at number 2 were saying that he could still potentially be their guy based on the pro day, which is interesting. Because the news is that Sam Darnold's their guy. Again, it's March.
Well, here's a wrinkle. Where did the Jets coach come from? Jets picking number 2. So we know what's happening number
San
1.
Fran.
You don't know what's happening number 2. But the head coach of the Jets is a good friend of yours. So you might have some insight into what's happening number 2, where they're leaning number 2. And so picking number 3, you might know the 2 guys who are going to be off the board and what you're going to have the opportunity to pick.
Sure.
And we've heard, Greg Cosell thinks the Jets are sticking with Darnold. But also somebody now could come up to go to number 2 to get the Jets are sitting pretty if they are sticking with Darnold in terms of, hey, you want the second quarterback in this draft? Come to us. San Francisco is getting the second quarterback in this draft at least, or maybe the third at number 3.
Tennessee Power Hour here on Outkick 360 as we welcome in Austin Price of Volquest.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Austin Priceless. Austin, hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well. Brent Hubb's in absentia today, but that's okay. We will hold down the fort without him. There'll just be less movie references and less talk of Luke Perry.
Yeah, and no Easter decorations behind Austin on the video, which surprised me. Just a Masters portrait up behind you, Austin. I'm a little surprised we're not celebrating some holiday, even if it's out of season.
I'm picturing a Christmas tree with pastel eggs hanging off of it.
I thought about it, but I decided just to stick with what I know best, and that's Augusta National.
Hey, we're going to get to all things spring practice and Kaidon Salter in a moment with the suspension there. Let's start by recapping the Tennessee Volunteers basketball season and the early exit in the NCAA tournament. Your overall thoughts of the way they performed in Indy last weekend and the fact that they were a one-and-done against Oregon State.
Very disappointing. I thought a disappointing year. I understand what Coach Barnes was saying. Like you want to, appreciate the fact that this team got to the NCAA tournament. That's a good thing that this program is now to a point where, the bar is set, that, you want to make the NCAA tournament every year. But when you continue to bring in really, talented players like Jaden Springer, Keon Johnson, Josiah Jordan-James the year before that, this coming year with Kennedy Chandler and Jemai Moshak, to me, you want to, take that a step further. They've got to find a way to take the step as a basketball program. They're going to be okay at the wing going forward, even if they lose, Keon and Jaden Springer. To me, they've got to find their point guard, which they have done that, but I think you need to find a little bit more help there as well. It can't be all on Kennedy Chandler. And then they've got to find help in the post. If John Fulkerson comes back and is a more like John Fulkerson we saw as a junior, then I think that Tennessee, obviously would not need as much help in the post. But to me, they still need an athletic post that can help them, that can really kind of stabilize the interior front court, can protect the rim. That's something that Yves Pons gave you. You won't have him going forward. So who's going to protect the rim going forward into next year? To me, there's a lot of questions around this Tennessee basketball program right now. The cupboard's not bare, but they've got to figure out some things through either the spring signing period or going the transfer route to be able to shore up some spots where they're probably a little bit weak.
Well, and that's where I was going to go with it, Austin. It seems like, maybe crossroads is too strong of a word, but Rick Barnes in Tennessee had their most success bringing in maybe some overlooked prospects and developing them. Now they bring in 2 one-and-dones. They didn't get the desired results, especially in the NCAA tournament. They've got the number 1 point guard in America coming in. It looks like they've solved point guard if he's as good as advertised. What do you think happens with this roster? Is it back to the transfer market? Is it a reevaluation of what they're doing? How does Kim English's departure in terms of recruiting, how does that affect them moving forward? How do you think Rick Barnes looks at this situation, and how is he going to change or adapt moving forward? Or will he?
Well, I think you hope that he adapts in some form or fashion. Rick's a veteran coach. Nick Saban probably wouldn't have won a national title and stayed at the top of the mountain had he not adapted. If he was still trying to play games, 17-10, would Alabama be what Alabama is? I don't think so. So I think, all coaches need to evolve. Look at Bob Huggins. He evolved his game instead of that kind of, almost bad boys defense, kind of, bully, type teams that he had. Now they spread it out. They shoot a ton of threes. It's totally different with him at West Virginia than it was with him at Cincinnati. So I think, all coaches, especially the good ones, and Rick Barnes is a good one, figure out a way to evolve. And so I think you still look at the transfer market. I think you look and see what high school players are available, potentially who could reclassify. Obviously, the kid in Pennsylvania, BHH, Brandon Huntley Hatfield, he's someone that I think that Tennessee's in a really good spot with. I think if he were to pick Tennessee, he probably would reclassify and be here for this upcoming season. He is an athletic post player who can help protect the rim, does those type things. The Meshack kid Tennessee's already signed. He's a really athletic defender that blocks shots and can play that 3-4 position or the 2. So Tennessee needs to find some help to go along with Kennedy Chandler. They've got to get more consistent play from Victor Bailey and Santiago Vescovi. My question is can those guys can they do it? I mean, they're almost liabilities on defense, and if they're shooting it well, they're great, and if they're not, they are a detriment to you because they continue to volume shoot. So Tennessee going to dip their feet into the transfer market, especially in the posts. I think you could potentially look at the West Coast for a guy that potentially could come out of there or continue to hear rumblings. Don't want to drop the name because the kid's not in the portal yet. We continue to hear rumblings out of the West Coast that you could end up somebody coming from the western side of the United States, back east. And Tennessee could be a landing spot for him. Tennessee's going to continue to look at guys. I don't think Walker Kessler is a realistic option at this point. Of course, Tennessee didn't really factor. They were early in factoring in his recruitment, but not late. And when he's leaving North Carolina, and everybody's pinpointed him for Gonzaga.
Austin, maybe it's extremely unlikely at this point, but are there odds that Springer or Johnson could return if they don't get the feedback from the NBA that they're looking for?
I just don't think so. I mean, I think Keon is going to get drafted so high or be projected so high that, I just don't think he can come back. And then someone who is, like Jaden Springer, Jaden doesn't really do anything poorly. But I don't think Jaden necessarily does anything great and exceptional either. And that's you're really kind of projecting off potential. Can an NBA team take all the stuff that he does well, which is a ton? He rebounds the well for a guard. He shoots it solid. He obviously has good vision and passes it. He can play point if you need him to. But he's also kind of a tweener. He's not a true point guard, but he's kind of small for a shooting guard. What do NBA teams tell him? And does he want to come back to college? It's kind of been his plan all along to go to the NBA after 1 year. I would be shocked if he did. I would probably be less shocked if Keon Johnson came back out of the 2. And I think he's at a point where he's going to be projected at right now. Some of the latest mocks are just outside the top 5 that you just can't come back.
I know a lot of fans may say, who cares? But I'm wondering to what degree you think the talk of Barnes as a tournament failure and his deficiencies in that department ultimately wear on him. We know his personality, but in the back of his head, every time he comes home early from the tournament, does it get worse, and how much is it rattling around in there for him?
I don't think that it really. I mean, maybe I guess internally it might, be something that he thinks about. But as you referenced, Rick's personality just doesn't lend itself to thinking that that this really bothers him a super ton. Would he like to go further? 100%. Would he like to cut down the nets in the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament and win a championship? 100%. But I think Rick's very comfortable in his own skin, very comfortable with where his career has gotten to. And so I don't think that, he hangs on any particular game or any particular win or loss. And so, for me, I think that coach is coaching because he loves to coach and because, he knows that if it ever becomes a burden, he could walk away and be very comfortable in retirement. I think he coaches because he loves to impact kids and he loves to just coach and it keeps him young.
So we're just getting heated up in the Volquest Power Hour. When we come back, Josh Heupel just completed his first practice as Tennessee's head coach. There's news with a star freshman quarterback being suspended. Henry To'oTo'o, Quavaris Crouch, where does it stand with them? So much to get into as we continue.
Another segment with Austin Price of Volquest.com straight ahead on Outkick 360. Outkick 360 of the Tennessee Power Hour alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharsky. I'm Jonathan Hutton. Paul, the big headline across the NFL. monster trade for the NFL draft. Miami trading out of pick number 3. San Francisco has moved up, and in the process, they gave up the 12th overall pick this year and 2 future first-round picks.
Just a haul for Miami, which turns picks it got in the Laramie Tunsil trade into even more. This is Patriot-esque, where you turn a pick you acquired into more picks, into more picks, into more picks. Very good work by Miami, but also tells you, I think, Miami's in on Tua.
Well, they said they would be, at least for another year, and it tells you that San Francisco is in on one of the top quarterbacks, Zach Wilson or Trey Lance.
And out on Jimmy Garoppolo.
Justin Fields.
Which then, I mean, they're all kind of tentacles here. So is San Francisco now out enough on Garoppolo that he ends up on the street? And then the obvious landing spot for him is New England, where Bill Belichick had success with him when he stayed healthy. And, you know, can he facilitate that offense with the new weapons in a better way than Cam Newton can? I would say he can. You know, and then that would eliminate New England from needing to fish for a bigger quarterback, and they're drafting a little bit lower. And these quarterbacks could all be gone. We could see quarterbacks gone here in, you know, 4 of the first 5, 5 of the first 6. You know, it's going to be a quarterback-heavy, top-heavy draft.
Will be a mad scramble for sure coming up in late April for the NFL draft. The scramble is on to find some players who are available for spring practice who are under scholarship right now at the University of Tennessee. And one of their top recruits among those not on the field due to suspension, Chad, Kaidon Salter, not available right now.
Yeah, what's the latest with that, Austin? You look at Kaidon Salter, the other players suspended. What is going on there? How long do you think this will continue?
Well, you heard Josh Heupel yesterday say, like, for right now, they are kind of in a situation where, you know, until the university acts on it and decides what they're going to do, all those players are in a bit of limbo. And, you know, it's not ideal for Kaidon Salter, but to me, it's not ideal for a guy like Isaac Washington. Isaac Washington, to me, one of the more talented players that came in here early, and, you know, is coming into a situation where one of the top schools that recruited him besides Tennessee was Auburn and Rodney Garner. And so Rodney Garner comes in with a familiar face that's a young kid that he can mold, and all of a sudden he's not here right out of the gate. So, like, I think that it hurts a guy like Isaac Washington. It obviously hurts Kaidon Salter, as, you know, realistically every quarterback on this roster was at you know, at the baseline. They were at, you know, the ground zero. Nobody was ahead of anybody else. And so Kaidon Salter had a chance to come in here and you know, kind of do what he does, which is lead, play confident, you know, run around, make some plays, use his athleticism. And right now he is not. Earlier today he was training at D1 Knoxville. You know, and the hard part for Kaidon Salter, and you don't know where the young man's mind is at. If anybody knows his story, his father came down with COVID, has been in UT hospital ever since the weekend that Kaidon moved in back in January, and was on a ventilator for quite some time. Has you know, thankfully, and then, you know, praise everybody that he came off the vent and has been doing better. And you know, but the whole family's been up here. Like, this has been a real tough time. And then, you know, so who knows where his mind is at mentally. No, it's not excusing what, you know, any of those kids did. But at the same time, you know, we all make mistakes, especially as a 17-year-old kid, because he was not originally named, guys, in the original report, because he's underage. Finally, you know, Heupel, when asked if he was out there yesterday and asked why he wasn't out there, divulged that he was part of the group that is indefinitely suspended. So not ideal for anybody, including Aaron Willis and Martavis French, who are the other two. But, you know, you hope that, you know, Tennessee is going to say, okay, you guys made a mistake. You guys are going to, you know, do internal punishment and figure it out. But you guys are still going to be part of this football program because, as, you know, you guys noted, Tennessee does not have a ton of depth. They don't have a ton of bodies. And even some of the ones they do have are, you know, coming off off-season surgery and not available for spring.
So Henry T. and Quavaris Crouch, fair to say now, Austin, that they are not going to be a part of this football team? And what happened with both of them? I know Crouch was there and working out. Now he's not around. Henry T. came back and maybe left. What is the latest with both those players?
Well, for both, Tennessee is, looks like they're in the rearview mirror for, Tennessee's in their rearview mirror. They're moving on. I know Josh Heupel didn't totally close the door yesterday, but at the same time, if you weren't back here for the start of spring ball, to me, if you weren't back here at the start of March, you probably weren't coming back. But you let practice begin without you. I just don't see any way these kids are back. And you're right. I mean, Crouch worked out with a couple, for a week or so with the team, then left. He's been kind of, people have been talking about Michigan State around him. Henry's had different, there were some people talking about Ohio State. I've also heard potentially Florida. It doesn't seem like Alabama, which was the original kind of thought to be destination for Henry. So, yeah, I mean, if you're Josh Heupel and the staff, much like when we talked to the assistants a few weeks ago, Chad, you have to worry about who's in your building. You can't get caught up in worrying about who's doing virtual learning 12 states over.
So is Henry T in the building? Is it reports where he was working out?
You guys have
Are they
Dr.
waiting on him in any way possible right now?
No, I don't believe he is here. I believe he came into town. I know he had spoken with several of his teammates. He spoke with Tennessee. He spoke with other people that I know of, and at least was toying around with the idea. I know Tennessee wanted him to come out of the portal to go through spring. Here's the thing you have to think about Henry. Henry, when he come out of high school, didn't show up till the summertime, so didn't go through spring then. Last year, COVID hit. It didn't go through spring there. And now he's not going to go through spring again. So to me, that's hurting himself. I think, if he came back for spring, part of me thinks he was, at this point, he was just coming back to go through spring practice and then leave again. But who knows? Ultimately, it doesn't look like he's going to go through spring. And, I think the kid's only hurting himself, no matter where he ends up. Sure, he'll end up at another top-end Power 5 program, but I think you're hurting yourself by missing out on all these practices.
I believe UT's got 11 guys who exercised the additional year that's available to them because of the COVID crisis, and that's the highest number in the SEC. Does that say a lot about Heupel to you, or is it more contextual based on who those guys are?
A little bit of both, Paul. I think some guys, relish the chance to come back and play in an offense or play, under a certain coach. But then I think some guys, knew that, they either were going to go down a level and play, or, they weren't go, they were going to be out of football and not, able to play in the NFL. So I think that, Tennessee's going to use some of these, like a guy like Matthew Butler, having a chance to learn under Rodney Garner, something that he really looked forward to and really gravitated towards once he found out, Rodney Garner was going to be his defensive line coach. And of course, that was after the NFL draft thing had come and gone. But I think he was kind of hoping that Tennessee was going to land a defensive line coach that could help him. That defensive line group, I think we said it a week ago, for last year, man, they've had basically a substitute teacher. And we all know what that means. It means that, there wasn't a whole lot of accountability, when it comes to doing things both on and off the field. And so I think these defensive linemen are getting a rude awakening with Rodney Garner, who knows how to get it done.
Austin Price of Volquest.com with us for the Tennessee Power Hour on Outkick 360. Austin, with the coaching change, there will be players who benefit just from getting a fresh set of eyes on their overall skill set as spring practice begins. Who are the 1, 2, 3 players that you think can make an initial impression on a new coaching staff that could not get over the hump with the previous regime?
Well, I think there are players that maybe played under the previous regime that will see potentially more playing time with this current staff. The fact that Willie Martinez brought up Theo Jackson tells me Theo Jackson is someone that Willie Martinez likes, gravitates towards. So I think that, Theo Jackson's a guy that could potentially see more time under this new staff. Offensively, where does a guy like Kenny Solomon play? Kenny's a track guy. He can run. That's something that really resonates with this offensive staff. He was a defensive guy 2 years ago. Remember, had that interception in the kind of garbage time in a kind of a lesser game. Then, was on offense at the latter part of last year. Like, where does this staff play him at? I think he's going to start at receiver. We'll see, though. He have potentially a former walk-on who had offers to go to Louisville and a few other, programs coming out of high school, but chose to walk on here. He's now a scholarship guy. What does a guy like, Kenny Solomon do? And then to me, the position that I think you see more activity at with this new offense is tight end. I think Princeton Fant, yes, he played, but I think he could be a much bigger factor. Same thing for Jacob Warren, and then a young guy like Miles Campbell. I think tight ends will get more run in this offense from a pass catching standpoint, and not just two tight end personnel where they're trying to line up and just block than they ever did under the last staff.
I know the anticipation for this offense is it's going to be extremely up tempo. How fast can they go right now out of the chute, so to speak? How quickly can Heupel get this offense up to the speed he would like to play with on game day?
Well, I don't think they know how fast they can go yet. I mean, I think right now they're in just kind of the, they're getting all the ingredients out, and putting them on the counter to try to cook. Like I don't think they have any kind of, thought process on how fast they can go. To me, a lot of that is dictated by the quarterback, what quarterback wins the job, and how fast that person can go, and how much he can retain and spit stuff out. So, I think a lot of it depends on who wins the quarterback battle and which one of those guys can do exactly what the offensive staff wants him to do.
Austin, of the true freshmen that are on campus and participated in practice yesterday, who's the most likely to have an immediate impact on this team for Tennessee?
Well, he's not a true freshman, but it's going to be Tyon Evans. I think both he and Jalen Wright make the most sense. And don't forget about a guy who's a Nashville guy, Walker Merrill. I've continued to hear good things about Walker Merrill. He was played at Brentwood. I think they're going to use him a little bit differently than Ron Crawford and Brentwood used him. And I think you're going to get to see the full repertoire from Walker Merrill. And maybe not something you saw when he was at Brentwood because of the offense they run and how they used him. It would not surprise me at all if coming out of spring or even early in fall, everybody's going, wait, what, Walker Merrill? Where did he come from? I thought he would redshirt this year. I think that potentially he could be a guy that helps this football team. And then, I still go back to Tyon Evans. I mean, he looks the part, and he's got high hopes, and he's motivated coming out of JUCO.
So, Austin, one quote from Josh Heupel that was refreshing was he was talking about rebuilding and what it takes to get things going quickly. There wasn't a lot of hedging about, this is a 3 to 5 year process. He said, it's my job to get things going as quick as possible, but also trying to understand how you implement what you want to do and don't rush it. What do you think, just early on, impression of Josh Heupel and not just speeding up the offense, but how maybe he's going to try to speed up the rebuilding process with Tennessee and instilling his program?
Well, there's no talk of year zero, and I think there probably should be. If any coach that's come through here in the last 15 years deserved to be able to call it year zero, it is Josh Heupel. And so, that's kind of where this thing's at. I think he's handling it the right way, though, because I think the more you don't talk about year zero and you kind of just attack and don't let the kids feel like that they have kind of a buffer year, I think you might get more out of them. So I actually like the way he's handling it, vocally. He's not talking about the things that, I know we're not the most talented team. I know, we have less depth. I know all the reasons why they shouldn't win. He's talking about the reasons they should win and should compete and should turn the corner quicker than people think. So I think that's a good way. Look, if it don't happen, it don't happen. But I think for anybody, for specifically Josh Heupel, it's all about trying to instill the right mindset. He's tried to build these kids up in the off season with kind of positive reinforcement and letting them, feel good about themselves and the positives that are going on in the program. And I think that's been good for these kids because I think that, they were kind of, beat down a little bit. So I'm real interested to see how all this goes going forward.
We've all seen the pictures that Tennessee posted, Austin, of you got Mike Vrabel and John Robinson bracketing Josh Heupel, watching Trey Smith. You've got Mike Vrabel working one-on-one with Trey Smith. A lot of talk about the Titans GM and coaches working with Trey Smith in Tennessee. But just watching Pro Day, what was your big takeaway? Was it the big man in Trey Smith, or did someone else really impress you?
Well, we weren't able to go to Pro Day. That's something that we weren't able to go do. I know Trey Smith impressed. I was happy for Josh Palmer. He ran as fast as he thought he could run, or maybe a touch quicker 4.51, 4.53. He's somebody that, again, I think can get it on an NFL roster. But the one thing he doesn't necessarily have that Marquez Callaway did is the special teams experience. I think that goes a long way, for a guy like Marquez Callaway, because he played special teams and can help as a gunner or a returner. And, Bryce Thompson, to me, also someone who I think from a work ethic standpoint can get there. I'm not sure he's going to be drafted real high. He's never going to run that well. He's kind of a football player. So can he get on a roster and do enough to impress, to wedge his way in and earn a spot? Outside of that, it's kind of slim pickings. I mean, there just wasn't a whole lot, at Pro Day.
So, Austin, when you look at recruiting right now for this upcoming class, I would say that it's been, I don't know if slow is the right word, but uneventful so far for Josh Heupel. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good or a bad thing, but what is the hottest ticket item right now with Josh Heupel, with this staff, with who they're recruiting the hardest?
Well, I think that the hottest ticket item that they're selling is opportunity, which is what every Tennessee staff has sold for the last 15 years. As far as recruits, Tennessee continues to be in a good spot with Keaton and Destin Wade out of Summit High School over there in the Mid-State. They continue to, I think, be in a good position for several in-state kids. Now they're having to play catch-up for guys like Isaiah Horton, Dallin Hayden, Jordan James, Cam Miller, but I do think that they are in a good spot, like with a guy like Giovanni Davis out of South Pittsburgh. And, this is a staff that is starting to branch out. They started so much of what they focused on the first month was in-state for the class of 22. But I think you're starting to see them branch out and do more things outside the state of Tennessee. Kids in Mississippi, they love to be a real factor for Branson Robinson, a really big-time running back out of the state of Mississippi. He's thought to be going to Georgia, but at the same time, Georgia just picked up Malachi Starks yesterday. Where do the Bulldogs stand for Branson Robinson? I think that probably helped Tennessee's case a little bit with Branson. They're going to be a factor for Taven Jackson, the quarterback out of Indianapolis. They're going to be a factor for Addison Nichols, the offensive lineman out of Greater Atlanta Christian. Tennessee's going to continue to branch out, in the surrounding states, but specifically Georgia, the Atlanta area. They're in on a couple of different defensive backs down in the state of Georgia. They're trying to work Florida. I always think that that's a bit of a pipe dream. I know this staff has ties down there. They all came from UCF, but at the same time, give me some kids that Tennessee's pulled out of the state of Florida that were more than just average players, Chad. Kurt Maggitt, good solid player, not great. Corey Vereen, good solid player, not great. You can keep going right down the line. A lot of these guys, even if they found the field, they've just kind of been good, not great. So, to me, Tennessee, right now they're in a position where they've got to be able to take, just some good players, but they've got to develop them into great players. Because right now, Tennessee's not exactly the hottest name out there in recruiting because of all that's gone on and the uncertainty over the investigation.
Well, and unfortunately for Tennessee, they've been very lucrative in the transfer market for other programs. Great players leaving Tennessee and going to other places. Do you expect Tennessee to reverse that trend, maybe even post-spring, where they become active members of that transfer market, bringing scholarship players in?
I think it's possible, but here's the one thing you got to think about. If Tennessee is going to have to self-impose or they're going to have to take some scholarship reductions, they've got, I think, 4 spots left for the 21 class. Is it not smart to go ahead and offer those up? I mean, who are you really going to get out of spring? If you're getting somebody that is going to help your football program as a starter, as a contributor, as someone who can help you win football games, yes, you take them. But if you're not, if you're just taking kind of a body, I think you're better off to not. I mean, you go back to Jeremy Pruitt's first class, and he took a lot of bodies late in his class, whether it be Keller Christ, Madre London, Brandon Davis. You can go right down the line. Cedric Tillman. I know Tillman played a little bit more here lately, but I mean, they took a lot of just bodies. And how many of those bodies actually helped Tennessee, especially the 2 grad transfers in Christ and Madre London. They didn't win football games for Tennessee at all. And you look back, Tennessee shouldn't have taken them.
Austin, what's the schedule moving forward for spring practice in Tennessee?
Practice tomorrow, Then they'll have a couple of days off. They'll basically Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Now they will have to make up the one practice from this past Tuesday when they missed because of so many COVID positives, and they were trying to recover from that. But other than that, it'll basically be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday with that one practice, sprinkled in. I think next week though they actually will go Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. They will not practice Saturday, the day before Easter, and give their kids a chance to either go home and spend Easter with their families or, just kind of regroup. So I think they'll practice on Good Friday.
Well, here's hoping that they get outside so the reporters and everyone at Volquest can actually get out there and get a look at this team, because you're restricted if they go indoors for weather.
That's right. We are. I mean, it is what it is. Do I think it's ideal? No. But at the same time, like Tennessee is doing more than what anybody else is doing about trying to get media back to practice. I think part of that's because they know that they need to be able to sell the football program, and us not being able to see anything doesn't really help sell it. But give Bill Martin, a guy that doesn't want any credit, I'm going to give him credit anyways because he's been very proactive. Josh Heupel's been very open to, Tim Banks or Rodney Garner or whoever coming on The Nation with Chris Lowe and myself. They've let all of the new staff members talk to the media in Zoom sessions. So they've been very proactive about selling the football program, which includes us returning to practice.
Are they going to be active, Austin, about letting you watch something other than stretching in the first period of practice? Will you be able to watch a little more practice now?
I do think that we will be able to watch more practice. I don't think that it'll be a crazy amount. That's just kind of the way they do it now. I mean, I remember a time, Chad, when I sat in there in Neyland Stadium and watched scrimmages, and John Painter and Bud Ford sit up there and they took stats. And at the end of the scrimmage, you saw that Darryl Vereen had run for 44 yards. Before they moved him from running back to linebacker. So you kind of understand that that's the territory you're in. But yes, I do think you'll see more than we saw, whether it be with Butch Jones or Jeremy Pruitt.
Austin Price, Volquest.com is the website. Look forward to Brent Hubbs being back with us next week as a part of the Hour with Austin. Check out the website all weekend. Great spring practice coverage and features galore across the board. Austin, great stuff as always, man. We will catch up with you next week. Always enjoy this.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, guys. And Chad, nice Georgia shirt.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Always representing. I love my Bulldogs.
It's all about
Huge Isaiah Wilson fan.
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
right.
just in support of him and his stellar pro career. That's what it's all about.
So, remember the Titans had the number 1 pick. They traded back to 15 or 16 with the Rams. Then
12.
They came back up to 8 in order to get Jack Conklin. Those trades were spaced out. Dolphins aren't wasting any time. So they just traded from 3 to 12, and now they're back to 6 in another deal with the Eagles. So a lot of activity going on all at once.
We'll tell you what it means.
The first round getting scrambled.
Live reaction to this big trade across the NFL where the Eagles are now picking 12th, the Dolphins picking 6th, and the 49ers picking 3rd. We'll tell you what it means next on Outkick 360. Outkick 360, Tennessee Power Hour, Outkick Network. Glad you're with us. Wrapping up the show with the breaking news across the NFL. We now have a new top 12 draft order, after the Miami Dolphins have traded out of pick number 3. Initially, it is with the San Francisco 49ers, who trade the 12th overall selection, a third-round pick, and then 2 future first-round picks to the Dolphins to move from 12 to number 3 overall. It's a clear sign they're going after their quarterback at number 3. They'll follow up the picks of Jacksonville and the New York Jets. The 49ers currently picking 3rd. It moved Miami back to 12 overall. They immediately trade the 12th pick and a future first-round pick to move up to the 6th overall selection with the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Eagles pick up a future first-round pick to move back 6 spots to 12 overall. So your updated draft order, as we look at the order 1 through 12, Jacksonville, New York Jets, San Francisco 49ers, Falcons, Bengals pick 5th. Dolphins now pick 6th. Lions, Panthers, Broncos, Cowboys round out the top 10. And because this affects the top 12 picks in the draft, the Giants pick 11th, and currently picking 12th, the Philadelphia Eagles. There's speculation that the Eagles were trying to trade from 6 to 3 to go after Zach Wilson. And when that did not come to fruition, when it ended up being the San Francisco 49ers, they said, you know what, we'll trade back, pick up some future picks. They could end up with 3 first-round picks next year if Carson Wentz plays to a certain level in Indianapolis.
Now, they need a receiver very badly. The speculation is that Miami, if they're not still in range of a quarterback, like maybe they like all the quarterbacks, and they say, hey, we'll take the last quarterback, or that they want a receiver or Pitts there. 6 would be a prime spot for a top receiver here. Would have been for the Eagles as well. Now the Eagles could get a good receiver at 12, but a better receiver for Miami at 6, and that's one of their big charges for Tua here, is to get him weaponry. One of the Devontae Smith, who we talked about this week, is one of the guys that's being talked about for Miami, which would be a reconnection for Tua. So
and Jamar Chase could also be in that range because they're picking 6. Then the quarterbacks are going to go fast.
Yeah. So very interesting day, and I think fun for all of us that this happens early instead of draft week or even draft day, because it gets to reset the whole thing. And now the whole top 12 mock thing is a new game.
And keep in mind, Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. Adam Schefter tweeted out right after the trade that he spoke with someone in San Fran, higher up in the organization, that told him that Garoppolo is their guy. He's their guy this year. He has a no-trade clause. So until he agrees to a trade, there is no trade. But draft weekend is intriguing for them at the quarterback spot because you don't give up 2 future first rounds to move up to this level of the draft without having your quarterback in mind. Many think that Trey Lance is the 3rd best quarterback in this draft. Some have Mac Jones as high as the 3rd best, behind Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence, who's going to go number 1 overall to Jacksonville. Don't forget about Justin Fields being in the mix. And the Atlanta Falcons picking 4th now are in a very intriguing position because they can draft their quarterback of the future. They can draft an offensive lineman to help with protection. They can get better in the trenches.
They could draft Pitts.
They could draft Pitts at tight end, or they could also trade out based on the moves that we're seeing and the precedent being made for what it's going to take to move up in this draft.
Now, it would seem to me if they're going to trade, that would more likely be draft day, because I think the team that would come up, it would depend on which quarterback's left, right? If you're Carolina and you're coming up, well, which quarterback's left there for me?
What's the market like for Jimmy G? I think that's a huge question, right? I mean, if they're going to make a trade and he's going to be, dealt because of all this, how hot is that market for Jimmy Garoppolo?
Not very.
Well, he's won whenever he's been available and not injured.
Not very hot, though. His contract's tough, I think.
It's a huge contract.
And his recent film is bad. So I think there are select places where they feel like, but you're going to have to be
Well, you
running
can't
an
stay
offense
healthy,
that's
too.
not going
That's
to
another
carry
problem.
you, right? We talk about New England. I think he could work in New England. But if you're going for a
New
new
England
school
is-
offense that's going to open it up and count on the quarterback to be the guy, I think Garoppolo doesn't endear that sort of confidence right now, and you'd rather draft.
I would be shocked if it's not Fields or Wilson, depending on who goes second to San Francisco. Like, that's the option to me. For what? And who knows what Kyle Shanahan's thinking.
This whole thing
But it
hinges
doesn't
on the
feel like
Jets.
it's Justin Fields.
Zach Wilson could go number 2 overall to the Jets.
That's what I'm saying. Whoever the Jets take, if it's
Between Wilson and Fields.
now maybe they stick with Darnold also, but I'm saying it's one of those two guys. Whoever falls to you at 3,
I don't
and they
know.
both could be available at 3.
See,
too.
I don't see Justin Fields as a Kyle Shanahan guy.
No, me neither.
The Kyle Shanahan move
Boot.
is, it's to me, it's Zach Wilson or Trey Lance in that spot.
I agree.
Fields deserves more credit for his arm and his ability to maneuver out of the
Is
pocket.
Fields an Arthur Smith guy?
Could be.
At
yeah,
4.
could be. I'm trying to picture in my mind what Shanahan would be after to run that offense. And Mac Jones is also should also be mentioned for that too. Because you don't move up to 3 unless you know that the guy is going to be on the board regardless of what the Jets do. You don't give up the picks you gave up in March. You do that on draft night.
And listen, I know quarterbacks move up. The Mac Jones was being talked about, 18th, 20th. Is he now, first half dozen guys?
It is quarterback and every other position
I
this time
know,
of year.
but I mean,
so
is he-
if you feel like you've got your future quarterback, you draft him in the first round and you pay a price to go get him. Period.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter where they're ranked.
But I mean, I need to look back. We're talking now, 5 or 6? You got Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance. Jones is 5th.
Yes.
Yes.
Talking about 5 conceivably in the first 6 or 7.
Sure.
5 in the first 6. When have we seen that?
Well, you're going to
That's
see top 10. I mean,
extraordinary.
Carolina's likely taking one of them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised still to see Carolina make a move. I don't think Carolina's going to say, well, we'll take the last one. Carolina's hell-bent on getting themselves a star quarterback. And now with Deshaun Watson not looking like somebody that you'd go and trade for, which I think they really wanted to do, I wouldn't be surprised to see Carolina make a dramatic move here, maybe with the Jets, if the Jets feel like they're going to stick with Darnold.
Could be. Yeah, the number 2 is open for discussion if Darnold is their guy.
But I wonder if the Jets haven't – that Jets relationship with San Francisco, based on Saleh, lends me to believe that San Francisco's dealing there with the number 3 pick and the Dolphins because it didn't feel like it had to deal with the Jets for the number 2 pick. Wouldn't you buy that kind of thinking? Unless it loves 2 guys, like you're saying, unless they'll take Lance or Wilson.
But we all agree that you don't make a move like this unless you're going to get your QB.
Of
Oh,
course.
no, it's a quarterback move.
Yeah, it's a quarterback move for sure. May I bring up one headline that jumped out to me yesterday?
Please do.
We talked about Will Wade on this show. The FBI investigation into Will Wade and LSU basketball continues. Not even closed yet. Which leads me to believe they have more on Will Wade. And Javonte Smart, the guy being investigated, is still playing at LSU. Is that not amazing?
Both of them will be in the ring of
but
honor
isn't it-
when this
We discussed it,
concludes.
but it's incredible that he remains employed through all of this. And I guess now you could just fall back on, well, we're waiting for the investigation to close. Once the FBI is done with it and we know the info in there, then we'll make a judgment on Will Wade and whether or not he's still the coach. But it's still remarkable that he's still the coach. And the FBI investigation, which has been going on for a while now, continues, but only looking into Will Wade and LSU basketball. I think they've shut the door on the other programs. They're continuing to look into Will Wade.
NCAA has to be relieved that LSU isn't hanging any banners from anything that's gone on during this, because we know how foolish they look when they take the banners down.
Yeah.
So
Those
no
victories
ceremony
happen.
to put them up, so you don't have to have a unceremony to take them down. So then a bar can bid on them to put them up in the bar where you could go visit the banner, which everybody still believes is legitimate anyway after you've won it. despite the fact that people were sanctioned after the fact.
They need they would have, if LSU kept winning, they would need the basketball equivalent of Tim Peel, the NHL ref, that in the second half says, I really needed to get 7 fouls quickly on LSU. So I had to get fouls going early on LSU because that was the mandate from the NCAA.
What's the weekend hold? You've got T-ball, but it's going to get rained out.
T-ball rained out last night, was going to be the season opener for my 5-year-old. Now tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Fingers crossed, no bad weather, and we get to play this.
Simon's got 2 baseball games tomorrow, potentially rained out. Then you see how the Sunday tournament schedule works out, and hopefully he can play baseball and soccer, but it depends if they win or lose at baseball and what time those games are. And, of course, it could be an entire wash of a weekend with no
You've got a
game.
Smorgasbord of kids' sports this weekend.
I'm excited
Soccer,
by it.
baseball, everything.
I love it, but I hate the fact that we're watching the weather apps.
Now, are you coaching or you just get to watch?
No, I'm just watching and trying to keep my trap shut so that he doesn't come over and say, I asked you not to.
Not that I hate coaching. It's not something I
Fun at
I
your
dread,
age.
but it's also I can't wait until I'm in a position just to sit in the stands or lean up against a fence and watch.
You say
and
that.
have no other responsibility but to get my kid there and to watch the game.
You say that, but then you get to a certain age, and then when you're watching somebody else do it, you're really compelled to say, well, if I was out there, these kids would have their damn gloves on the ground in the infield and be baseball ready all the time.
I'll probably have a little
Chad,
bit
your
of
thoughts?
that, but you coached also, so you know it. I think now that I've done it, if one parent says a word to me about anything, I'm not going to.
I'm out of the contest.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a very good response to it. I was telling Hutton that I'm going to be pitching, the coach pitch the kids, and if some parent complains about my pitching and that I didn't pitch it the right way to their kid, my response is to hand them the ball and say, go ahead, you got next inning. Please, I'd love to sit back there where you are right now and just watch the kids go out there and play.
Contentious parents at kids.
Oh,
I don't think it's going to happen.
you're guaranteed to have them.
There's not a lot of Koharskis
And
in
so
our
it
group,
begins.
so it's not going to be that way.
So it begins.
Only when
It's
you play
this
Lebanon.
way everywhere.
Yeah. Paul's got a reputation where he goes around tournaments, and he's gotten into parents in Mount Juliet. We had people in the old show call in, talk about
Not
how
with
much
my-
of an
not with
ass
my
Paul
own
made of
team's
himself,
parents.
yelling at parents and
Not with my
yelling
own
at other
team's
kids.
parents. With
Didn't you yell at other kids at one point, too?
Well, I
Another team?
mean, some of these tournaments take you to very red areas that, quite frankly, need some painting, and I did some painting.
Yeah, with your
It's too red.
To
It
kids.
says It's redder than your shirt.
I bet they're good at sports.
I believe you lost to a team in a red area, right?
Yeah,
The yipping?
we lose to some teams that are composed of kids that play baseball all day long because they don't go to school.
You mean their parents don't?
You're questioning their academics
Their parents
now?
don't pay coaches to coach them up and win baseball games at that level.
So they just go and
So
play?
they just go play.
No,
They're not
I'm
recruited
sure
on
they're
all-star
coached all
teams?
day long. They're coached to yip. They take them out to yip practice at 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay, here's how you torture another 8-year-old baseball player. Scream, yip, yip, yip.
Paul's hatred of children continues.
No, my hatred of parents of those children.
Teaching them one of your rules, which is poise, which apparently your team didn't have much of that day.
Not the first time through that. It was psychological torture. And our kids weren't ready for it. I admit it. We didn't know to get them ready
Here's
for
what's great.
psychological torture at 7.
Here's what's great about Paul. If it was anyone else's kid or anything in any other sporting way
Yep.
of life, Paul's response to anything would be, just hit it. Don't miss it. You swung and missed it. Why'd you miss it? It doesn't matter. Someone's yapping. Just hit it. That's your response to
We
everything.
tell our kids, Todd's big thing. One of my friends who, my kid's no longer playing with his kid right now, but it was, just throw strikes! Just throw strikes! We tell all our pitchers.
That's
Simple
actually
as
a
that.
pretty good rule in youth
Just
baseball.
get it across the
If
plate.
you get a
I know,
kid who
but
can
as
just
if
throw
that's-
strikes,
Yeah.
that's half the battle.
But as if that's helping the kids when the kid's struggling on the mound. We're
Then
like,
he's like
just throw
aiming it.
strikes, buddy! Just throw strikes!
Well, I umpired whenever I was in high school as a summer job. And I would tell the coaches and the kids prior to the game, I have a wide strike zone. The goal is to put the bat on the ball. I'm not going to sit here and walk around the bases and I'm not going to have a tight strike zone. We're going a foot outside, a foot inside. You better put the bat on the ball.
right.
We're
And
going to get this thing going. We
guys
got
came to the
45
plate,
minutes. We're going to get this game
They
over
swung
with.
the bat. They may strike out, but we had contact, and it felt more like a game. There's a certain level.
smart.
There is a certain level of junior league baseball that is just horrible to sit through and watch. because these kids
can't
sit
throw
there.
strikes.
They can't throw strikes, and the coaches
walk.
will send them up to the plate and just take until there's a strike.
Yeah.
And you could go, 7, 8 batters.
Oh, yeah.
Without actually putting the bat on
Well,
the
the
ball.
worst of the coaches
then you
say
get a
take
pass
2
ball.
strikes. A kid's struggling with his control,
Oh.
and they say take 2, you get 2 strikes. And I'm thinking that's
There
not
should be a
Oh,
rule.
I do that still. I go, he hasn't thrown a strike in 7 pitches.
You say that to the kid that's struggling
Say
on the
that
mound?
to the kid that's batting.
Oh, but the kid pitching can also hear it.
Well, I mean, I want
So
the kid
Paul
to
has a
know.
problem with yipping from
Right.
the other team, but a parent in the stand
Again,
pointing out that a 10-year-old hasn't thrown a strike in 7
Right.
pitches.
I'm telling the kid
is okay.
at plate to be smart about what he's looking
Oh,
at.
that's just amazingly bad.
No, it's
Let the coach who's making 6 figures do that.
Yeah. Seriously.
might
Let
be
the
making
former
6
Major League
figures
player coaching
as a
your team
banker.
do that.
Yeah, he's getting paid to coach that team. There's no doubt.
not 6 figures.
No doubt. Hey, get paid through FanDuel.com this weekend. FanDuel.com/OK360. You can follow us for the parlay.
Take
If
the
you missed
Zags.
that, you can go back and see our
How
top
no
picks.
refund you if the Zags don't win?
Well, it's a $5 bet for new users. $5 can win you $150. 30-1 odds for new users across the state of Tennessee. Sign up. You can take the Zags. Again, this is a straight-up bet. 30-1 odds on any team remaining in the tournament. FanDuel.com/OK360. Enjoy the Sweet 16. We are back on Monday where we will be previewing matchups to determine the full slate of the Final 8, the Elite 8 across the NCAA tournament. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you Monday at noon Eastern, 11 Central, right here on Outkick 360. Coming up in 2 hours, Outkick the Show with Clay Travis. Stay tuned.
Listen, we talk about blocking the box. The Ever Given is an all-time box blocker. It's wedged in the Suez Canal, causing a giant economic crisis. This is what could happen if you don't get the hell out of the intersection. Don't block the box. Do lock the locks.